Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. I am so glad to be here with Angelica Bailey today from the Maryland Municipal League. Angelica, thanks for taking time in the middle of session to have a kibitz with me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Angelica is the newest member of the super team of MML, as it's very well known here, representing and speaking out for and advocating for the 157 cities and towns that dot Maryland's wonderful landscape. So Angelica, you're still pretty new. Your background is everything from working for a member of parliament in England to everything else, to being in a legal firm and more. Why don't you give us a little sense of your journey and how you got here?
Wow, gosh, taking it back to the member of parliament, that was '07. That was a long time ago.
Oh,
I have had an interesting path for sure. I knew since I was 19 that I wanted to go to law school and that I wanted to do some sort of political advocacy work. And so that's really informed all of the decisions that I've made that led me up into MML. I'm very lucky that I knew my path early on and was able to sort of cultivate that. So went to college in DC, took advantage of every opportunity, every internship that I was lucky enough to come across. Went to University of Baltimore Law School, very proud alum. And yeah, I clerked for a judge. I worked at Legal Aid. I've done some LGBTQ advocacy work. I do have a diverse background now that I'm saying it all out loud like this, but it's been great. And, I think that there's something to have, something to learn from every single experience that I've had that really informs my advocacy at MML.
that's wonderful. Well, you bring a wonderful energy and a diverse background to MML. Talk about what's the biggest surprise so far of coming here to Annapolis, acknowledging COVID. We can get to that in a little bit, but being an advocate for our cities and towns.
That's a great question. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind is COVID and the impact that it's had on the logistics of this session. But I think it's been an interesting challenge for me to sort of switch gears. I was working for the builders for several years prior to joining MML, and that's a very different style of advocacy. It's a very different member group and member base and very different interests, although there is some overlap, of course, between local government and the development industry. Um, we have the opportunity to be a little more supportive, a little more proactive at MML. And I really enjoy that level of collaboration, and working for the builders was a wonderful experience. And it's switching gears for sure. It's a different world over here.
Sure. So one of the key mantras of MML is about one size cannot fit all. They're all 157 cities and towns are very different, and they're huge from Baltimore City. Mediums, medium large like Gaithersburg and Rockville, and then there's some teeny tiny ones. Talk about that. How challenging is that to come up with policies that work for all of those entities?
Yeah, that's probably one of the questions we get asked the most is, with such diverse members, how do we ever come to a consensus on anything?
Right.
And it's really amazing to see our members at work, especially on the legislative committee. Like you said, we've got 157 municipalities and townships all across the state, populations and revenue streams. Everything is very different. Geographic diversity. It's really amazing, though, to see everyone come together. And we have a legislative committee that is very active during session. And there's tons of diversity and tons of different interests and backgrounds represented on that committee. And it's been really inspiring to me to see everyone come together and put on their MML hats and make decisions for the best interest of all municipalities and all of our membership. And it's challenging and it's interesting and it's inspiring, and it's a very cool thing to witness.
So I have to give a shout out to some of my people, because Ryan Spiegel, a council member from Gaithersburg, was president of MML last year, very stressful year.
Mhm.
And the year before, the mayor of Rockville, Bridget Donnell Newton, was the president. So we have been well represented, but folks from all sizes and shapes of municipalities have been in charge and are now. Why don't you give us an idea of what some of MML's top priorities are this year?
Absolutely. We have one legislative priority this year, just one. That's how important it is. And that is highway user revenues. And I know, Madam Vice Chair, that you are probably tired of hearing us talk about it, but HURs are sorry, I know you hate acronyms, highway user revenues, although I will refer to them as HURs, is a top priority of ours since 2009. You know, the Great Recession back then cut our funding significantly. We were able to get back some of that funding in 2018, but as a part of that package, which only brought us up to about 85% of where we need to be, there was a sunset provision. And a lot of that funding is going to drop back off after fiscal year 2024. And it's going to be detrimental for our members to fall off that cliff. I mean, take a drive after it snows down any road, and our local governments are doing their very best with the limited resources that they have, but our roads need major work.
Yes.
And we need that funding to come back up. We need that sunset provision to come off. And that is our top priority this year. We have some wonderful sponsorship in both chambers, so we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Good. So talk about how COVID has affected the cities and towns. People are focused on small businesses and the restaurants that have closed and the nonprofits that are needing to step up and provide more services. But talk about the impact on local governments.
Sure. So local governments have been hit hard, just like everybody else. It's, you know, we're all facing the same thing, but every individual challenge is just a little different. One of the biggest challenges for us is we haven't received direct funding from the state or federal government. A lot of our funding is siphoned through the counties, which is fine. You know, we have very strong county partnerships, but it's an extra step, it's an extra challenge, it's an extra hurdle to getting resources to the communities that really need them. And our members care a lot about their communities. They care a lot about their constituents. It's, I hate to say unprecedented. I know we're all tired of the word, but
it's the word.
It is. And it's such a huge challenge, especially for smaller members or more remote members who might not have the resources that our larger members or counties or states or what have you might have. And how do you meet the needs of your constituents when those needs themselves are so diverse? I mean, you know, we talk about broadband, we talk about healthcare access and transportation and just getting PPE to folks who need it. It's been an interesting adventure.
Yep. Personal protective equipment, as I suspect most of our viewers would know, but for
Yes,
sure. A bill that you and I worked on together was my bill for nonprofits and local governments related to unemployment insurance. Why don't you see if you can explain that in plain English as to what's so important with that emergency bill that was just heard this week?
Yes, just this week.
Yes.
This past week. Everything runs together at this point.
3 months ago or yesterday, it's kind of the same. Yes.
Well, honestly, it's still March 2020 in my head. So that was such a great bill. And thank you so much for putting that forward. We were very proud to support that. Basically, local governments, you know, every employer has to pay unemployment. If there's a claim, if you have an employee who unfortunately has to leave, they file an unemployment claim, that money comes from the employer. Local governments, though, don't tend to pay into a fund on a regular basis. We tend to take a more reimbursement style. So one of the reasons is we just don't have that much turnover. I mean, thank goodness, you know, not only are we incredible employers, but we have incredible employees. So it's just not a challenge that we face that often. So it doesn't make sense for us to be making those continual payments when it's not really necessary. So it's more of a reimbursement model. During COVID, we expected at the beginning that there was going to be an increase in unemployment. Luckily, we haven't seen that yet in as significant numbers as we were originally expecting. And I really hope it stays that way. But of course, we're still working through things. There's no guarantee. And so the flexibility that your bill provides, instead of making that reimbursement payment within 30 days of receipt, now local governments have a full year to make it. And that flexibility, I mean, it goes back to the one size fits all doesn't really work point that you made earlier. That flexibility is so crucial for local governments. And so we were very excited to support that bill.
Well, let's hope that moves, hoping it will.
Yeah.
Let's pivot to another phrase that we hear in Annapolis a lot that some folks at home may not really understand. Can you talk about unfunded mandates, what they are and why they're so challenging and problematic?
Sure, it's the least sexy sounding thing, but it is so
important. Yeah.
So, you know, local governments enjoy their own authority in a lot of matters. But of course, the state is the ultimate decision maker in a lot of ways. And if the state decides that something needs to be done, I'm sure there's merit to it, but sometimes we can't afford to do it, or sometimes logistically we can't afford to do it. Just limited resources, limited manpower, limited staff. it's challenging sometimes. And so when bills are passed or even introduced that mandate a new rule, new policy, new procedure, what have you, but there's no funding source, there's no logistical support, it's very, very difficult for local governments to implement that successfully to the extent they can implement it at all. So unfunded mandates, a lot of times it's a great idea. You know, we love this idea. We'd love to be able to support it. We just can't afford to do it, or we just don't have the resources or the manpower or whatever it is. Unfunded
I'm
mandates.
going to say staff power or person power or something.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's a unique challenge of representing local governments.
It
It's
is.
something we
It
see in
is.
discussion.
And legislators come up with great ideas, but sometimes we have to really struggle to figure out how to pay for them. And
Exactly.
the state doesn't pay for everything, but you can't foist it on our counties or cities. So that's a challenge.
Yes.
All right, so I'm guessing we're about halfway through or maybe a little more. So I'm pivoting over to Rockville. I always have to say that I love my two children equally, Rockville and Gaithersburg and Rockville, so I gotta do that. So Angelica, talk about advocacy during COVID. How is it that you and your team are reaching legislators to explain your concerns about pending legislation?
We have a great team. Everyone is, they work very hard. They're clearly inspired by the work that we do. They have a deep passion for representing local governments, and that's apparent in the energy with which everyone comes to work every day, virtually comes to work every day. So that has been such an asset, and our team has worked so hard. We are trying to keep everything as normal as possible, even though it's all virtual. So trying to be present, trying lots of Zoom, lots of phone calls. You know, we're streaming all the hearings. It's sometimes a benefit when you have that increased access, when you're not in the car as much. You know, you can take more notes, you can make more calls, you can take more meetings when it's all virtual and you're not sitting in rush hour. But it's hard not to be in the hallways. Not only do we really miss that personal connection, but you're missing a lot of the inside baseball, right? You're missing who's talking to whom, and hey, can I just grab you 1 second? I just need 30 seconds of your time. Or hey, how did that vote go? I mean, the increased access with the voting sessions and subcommittee meetings being live streamed is, you know, we've never seen that before, and we're definitely taking advantage of it. We're definitely appreciating that. But yeah, there are definitely some challenges this year. We're doing our best.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword. Same for us. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
I've got constituents and advocates who can testify that don't have to drive to Annapolis, pay for parking, wait for hours on end to have their bill come up to speak for, 3 minutes or something. So this time I've had witnesses from literally on vacation in Florida, retired in North Carolina. Those were two of my 911 witnesses, and that could never have worked. But anyway, so state government clearly has focused on transparency and accessibility through, as you said, bill hearings, even voting sessions being online. Tell me how the local, even some of the smaller cities and towns are dealing with the pandemic in terms of transparency. Is everybody trying to do something similar so that their residents can see what they're doing?
I think so, to the best of everyone's ability. I think transparency is very important to anybody in government, whether it's local, state, federal. Well, I'm not going to speak for federal, but
Right.
at least for local and state, transparency is so important. And that's something that our members really value. So yeah, I think that to the extent that they can, of course, broadband internet access and high-speed internet access is challenging and somewhat inconsistent across the state. But yeah, I think, to the extent that folks can stream virtually, they're trying to take advantage of it. Everybody just wants their constituents to stay safe, but involved.
Yep. What do you expect will continue after COVID in terms of our cities and towns?
I would love to see that virtual setting continue. I would imagine it's somewhat of a hybrid where when it's safe enough, folks are still coming into their city councils, their, city halls, whatever,
Sure.
To participate in the public process. But I also really hope that we do keep a lot of the live streaming and the virtual access, especially for folks who might not be able to leave the home due to disability or, work schedule or whatever. Not everyone can get a babysitter or take off work to come to a hearing in the evening. So I really hope that we continue to see that level of access.
Exactly. Very good. So I'm going to put you on the spot with one hard question before we go to our fast five. So the hard question, and You may have to plead, I don't know, plead the fifth. When you're able to, like, do you have a favorite city or town in Maryland that you've been to? And is there one that you haven't been to yet that you look forward to visiting?
They say a lawyer should never take themselves as a client, so I'm not going to plead the fifth. Oh
And
gosh.
given that Gaithersburg and Rockville are obviously the first two, but other
Right,
than
of
those
course.
two,
Yes,
but
equally tied for first in my
yeah,
heart, of course.
equally.
I grew up in Catonsville. I'm a Baltimore City girl. I lived there for 9 years. My fiance and I only just moved out a few months ago. We just bought a house in the county.
Nice.
So Baltimore City will always have a place in my heart, but I suspect that answer only sort of counts because they're both counted as a county and a municipality.
That's true.
So, gosh, it's hard. We are in the process of planning our wedding and we were looking at St. Michael's. And
Beautiful.
at St. Michael's, Easton area,
Yeah.
but there's so many beautiful parts of the state. And I love how Maryland has beaches. We have mountains, we have country, we have city. It's a unique state and I'm very proud to call it home.
The late comptroller, Louis Goldstein, used to call it America in miniature.
Yes.
Because we have it all here. It's exciting. And people think of us as a small state. We're not that small, and we are very diverse in population, geography, and everything else. So that's
Love
great. All right, Angelica Bailey, the Fast Five. 5 random questions for quick answers. First, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Ooh, chocolate. That was easy.
Simple. All right. What are you doing to stay healthy during the pandemic?
Trying not to eat too much chocolate ice cream.
Okay.
We bought a Peloton. We jumped on the bandwagon. We bought a Peloton.
Wow.
Some days it's great, and some days it is great to hang laundry on, but it's, we're doing our best.
Are you one of those people who talks about it all the time to anyone who will listen?
I try really hard not to, but I just can't help myself. It's so pretty.
Okay. I have now seen them close up. I think they're a bicycle, but okay. If you could have dinner with anyone at all, living or dead, who would you choose?
Just one person, my grandfather. My mom's parents both passed way before I was born. Unfortunately, she lost both of her parents at a young age. And my family is Italian. And I have lots and lots of cousins and lots of aunts and uncles, but I am an only child. My mom was very close with her dad. And so I always wish that I would have had an opportunity to know him.
Lovely, lovely. A lot of people have not just a favorite song, but an anthem, a song that lifts you up, inspires, and empowers you. What's your anthem?
Oh, that's so hard. I have a big passion for music.
What kind?
Twist and Shout, the Beatles version of Twist and Shout. If I'm sleepy, if I'm dragging through a long night of work or whatever, putting that on, I'm pumped up, I'm dancing. I get a second wave. I love the Beatles, but I love their cover of Twist and Shout.
Perfect. That's awesome. And the 5th question, the only one that I ask everyone, Angelica Bailey, what is your secret superpower? What is a hidden talent, something that you're really good at that most people can't do?
I am really good at putting playlists together, actually. There's that passion for music again. My mom would make mixtapes for me when I was growing up for birthday presents, Christmas presents, whatever. And we always played music around the house. Of course, we're past mixtapes and mixed CDs, so now it's all Spotify. But yeah, if it's girls' night out or bachelorette party, or I'm trying to focus on work, I've got a playlist for everything. And I really enjoy putting them together for my friends. It brings people together. It's fun.
That is so fun. So I want to hear a playlist for lobbying legislators. You're going to have to work on that one.
That will not take me long. I've got it. Eye of the Tiger.
Yes, vote no, amend the bill. I don't know. I don't know if there are songs that say any of those things.
I'll find it.
Okay. Well, Angelica Bailey, it has been such a pleasure kibitzing with you today. And I'm so glad that I get to work with you as a municipal superstar and in partnership on behalf of Gaithersburg and Rockville and the 155 other cities and towns around Maryland. So thank you for all that you do, and stay safe. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.